Welcome, everybody, to the viewing room with Mark Pellegrino, Jacqueline Schumann, Jennifer Bouani, and myself, Kirk Barbera. Today, we'll be discussing The Bear, Season 2, although we will be talking about Seasons 1 and 2, but the viewing room, formerly TV Talk on ARC UK, did a Season 1 discussion previously, which I'll have show notes too. Now, The Bear, if you have not seen it, is a show is a show about a great chef, a world-renowned chef, whose brother dies, and the world-renowned chef inherits his little sandwich shop in Chicago, which is a rundown shop, and he decides to go there and fix this restaurant up. That's season one, essentially, is doing that amidst the very dysfunctional family environment. Season two is actually a change where he is trying to, instead of fixing his brother's vision in the shop that he has, it's this character named the Bear, or Carmy is his name, the chef, into his own vision of the kind of restaurant he wants and opening that up and all the pressure, again, amidst the chaos of a dysfunctional family. And that's a big part of what's happening. Anybody want to add a quick thing to that, or is that a basic overview of the plot?
Sounds great.
That works.
Okay, now, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick review. Everyone's going to give it either thumbs up or thumbs down and explain very briefly why. And then we'll break down certain episodes and our views of the themes and how to get more out of your viewing of watching this. Or if you haven't watched it, or if you have watched it, rewatching it again with the expectation of elevating your experience. There will be likely spoilers, just FYI. Okay. Mark, why don't we start with you?
This is a 2 thumbs way up. This is one of the most perfect television series I have seen in a long time. The writing is spectacular. It's filmed in a very cinema verite sort of way, documentary style. It's very rough. It's very gritty. The acting, they take words that are written on a page and make them improvisational, which from an actor's point of view is what you want. You want those words coming out organically and sounding like real conversation. The dynamics between the characters are a phenomenal chemistry between the characters themselves, but the problems that each character has to deal with, their arcs, as we might say, are very, very well constructed. And if you never thought that making a restaurant happen was the stuff of drama and comedy and insanity, this will change your mind. It is the full package, and there's a reason why it got all kinds of awards, Golden Globes and Emmy Awards, because it's very much deserved. That's my initial take.
Beautiful. All right, Jax.
Yeah, I actually agree with Mark on this. I give it massive 2 thumbs up. I was watching season 2 again. I kind of binged on it all day yesterday to have it fresh in my mind, and it made me remember how much I loved season 1. And I think because season 2 is slightly different in tone, I love that when TV shows do that, but still keep you on point, don't like pop you out of the narrative. I think that the character arcs are absolutely amazing. Like every single character has their own great arc in relationship to other characters, but in relationship to the restaurant as well. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was just so on point, and such great writing as well.
Absolutely. Jennifer?
I give it 1 thumbs up. I enjoyed the themes of it, the aspirational lifting of others up and building and creating a restaurant. I definitely enjoyed in season 2 the arcs of Carmen and Richie in particular, and even maybe the sister. Some of the other characters' arcs were not as strong to me, but they were supporting characters, so maybe that's not necessary. There were As far as the plot, there was very clear plot, and I admire whenever somebody can take a business, because Jackson and I are working on a screenplay right now where it's a business and you have to dramatize it and make it interesting. And a lot of times that topic can be dry, the topic of making money and being profitable. And they do that well, and they do it by interjecting a lot of conflict. But to me, and a lot of the conflict, the family drama is interesting. There were moments where the conflict felt forced, such as like a car alarms going off, or just screaming at each other just to be annoying and high anxiety. It just felt a little like cheating. But that's my only issue with that. That's why I wouldn't give it like 2 thumbs up. But overall, it was a great series, and it was really interesting. So, what about you?
Okay. So I also give it 2 thumbs up. I definitely think it also has, in my opinion, and we'll talk about this later, is one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen in my life. And I think there's a lot of, so 2 thumbs up, partially because I think the acting was phenomenal. So I don't quite agree with some of your assessment about the chaos, which I think was part of the greatness of the stylization of what they were trying to accomplish. But so that hopefully we could talk a little bit about this as we dig into the season. And I think that the arcs of the 3 main characters, Carmy, Sydney, Richie, I think, and then the donut gentleman, I forget the donut guy's name.
Is it Marcus?
Marcus.
Yeah. I think
He's-
their arcs are wonderful. And remember, this is a 30-minute sitcom, essentially. Not a sitcom exactly, but that's the format that it's essentially in.
Yeah.
And
I would call it dramedy.
That's what
I
they're
consider
saying.
it far more dramedy, than sitcom.
I didn't find it funny at all.
Well, I didn't
I was
find
like,
it
why
funny
is this a
either.
comedy? This
Yeah.
is drama all the way.
And a lot of people argued that too. And I saw a lot of people, I have friends who love Ted Lasso, and they were upset because this won, I think, over Ted Lasso, I believe, in the Emmys, because it was a comedy. And people are like, this isn't a comedy. But I do think, again, if you think about comedy in a more broad sense, in this, the sense of more uplifting in the end and not during it, there is a darkness to the comedy. But I agree, I did not like laugh out loud much. It made me think of more of the Shakespeare type comedy where people get married in the end type thing. But there's still a lot of turmoil and bad things happening. But again, to me, I think the reason they did it was because it was 30-minute format of this kind of structure. That's my opinion. Okay.
I do think, actually,
yeah.
speaking of Shakespeare, I do think that there's a lot of Shakespearean quality to this show. So maybe more in support of Jennifer's point. Like, there weren't places where I was, there were some places where I laughed out loud. But for the most part, I was stressed and kind of on the edge of my seat. And there were it had a lot of elements of tragedy to it. Carmen is a tragic character right now, who's trying to be a heroic character. But we can get into that a little bit later.
That's interesting. Well,
yeah, I'd like to essentially push back on that at some point, but we'll deal with that.
Well, I think we should start there since you brought that up. I think the character of Carmy, he's the lead in a sense, although I think Sydney and Richie are also co-leads. But so Carmy is the main master chef. He comes into this rundown sandwich shop in Chicago in a post-COVID world where being a restaurateur is very challenging. The whole landscape is shifting, and he's trying to bring it back. He's trying to make it great. I think one of the great lines in the first episode is, we can fix this, or something like that. Or I can make it better is one of the things. I think that's something like that. And so, when you're talking about him as a tragic character, I would like to understand what you mean by that. I'm going to fix this place is one of I think it's episode 1, which I think is a heroic thing to do, right? That's the first thing he sets out. I'm gonna fix this. So why do you
Yeah,
think
so
so go ahead, Jack.
so why I think that he has tragic elements to him, but as we end in season 2, where we end in season 2, I feel like he's on the path to achieving his goal. But there are still sort of dysfunctional elements in him, all to do with, I think, how he grew up and the kind of mother that we see he has, the kind of family environment that he grew up in, that he kind of like keeps shooting himself in the foot a bit. And even his
But how do you
intentions are heroic.
can you expand on
So
shooting himself in the foot?
yeah, a little bit. So I think he in season 2 he kind of finds love, right? He gets this great relationship with Claire Bear, who's an ER doctor, or in her ER residency. And I think it was brilliant that they have that as her occupation, because I don't think that there's anything else on the same level as what Carmen is going through and opening a restaurant that somebody could understand better than an ER doctor. Um, and so I think they have this really kind of beautiful relationship. He falls for her, but he's making choices that where, that's how he ends up getting locked in the freezer, right? In the very last episode, the opening night of their restaurant, is he's getting sort of distracted by her, and he's not calling the refrigerator repair guy, and there's other things that he's not following up on, and he's not 100% there, like in partnership with Sydney. And I don't think that his having that relationship with Claire is shooting himself in the foot. I think he hasn't risen yet to that, I guess he hasn't risen yet to that hero status where he doesn't see it. He actually sees it as a distraction. He sees that relationship as something that is interfering with his path to success, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think that's kind of the tragic part of it. So maybe, I guess what I mean is he's more like internally tragic. He doesn't like destroy things. He doesn't like destroy the world around him. I just don't think that he has risen yet to that level of internal hero. I'd like to know what you guys think about that.
Yeah. Mark, you said you wanted to push back?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to define our terms. For me, a tragic character is somebody who has character flaws that are so deep. They're sort of born under a star that will not enable them to go on any other path but the one they are on. So Hamlet is a tragic character. No matter what he chooses, he's destined. There's a certain concept of destiny to it that takes away from the willpower of the character. It's going to be it's going to be a loss no matter what he does. And you see in Hamlet how each foiled attempt sort of leads to further down the path of tragedy. I think he's a complex character, which means he has internal conflicts that he has to overcome in order to still achieve what he wants. But he's a very heroic character, and I think his conflict with his girlfriend comes in when Uncle Jimmy lets him know. It sort of fills him in on a truth, if I remember the episode correctly, which harkens me back to my own the attitude of anybody who's successful. He basically sort of says you got to choose. I mean, you can't have a distraction. If you're gonna succeed in this, you got to be on one track, man. Otherwise, it's going to go nowhere. And that's sort of what makes great businessmen, great artists, and yet sort of crappy in the personal realm, because their focus has to be, if they want excellence, it has to be in this direction. Now, there are people that say you can have it all. I don't know that you can. I remember Stella Adler they're talking about personality types, and like George Washington is not going to be Romeo. So Martha Washington would hopefully wouldn't marry him in the anticipation that he's going to be a deep romantic and completely focused on her, because he's a man on a mission and almost entirely focused on that mission. And you have to sort of absolve them of that area of their life, because their greater purpose is what they're bending towards. So I like the conflict that sets up in his life. She's a great girl. I have a total TV crush on her. She's an amazing actress. Her soul is so expansive and so And she seems like the perfect partner for somebody who is myopic, who has to have that artist focus on things. And so I do want to see where that's going to go in the end. It's a perfect kind of conflict for me.
Yeah. So
That I will say that voicemail that she sends him that he listens to finally at the end of season 2 broke my heart in like a million pieces.
So I want to, so I'll say a couple things real quick, and then Jennifer, if you have something on Carmen, and then we can move on from Carmen. But one thing is, I definitely see the art of the show is that it is making clear, I think, the message that Mark is saying right now about that viewpoint, that to be successful, especially in the context of this, what endeavor, this immense goal that they have, this dream that's a huge vision of their life, that you can't have any distractions, and thus romance is a distraction. Now, I don't agree with that in life, but I definitely agree with that as this, that's what they're saying in this story. And one of the in the first season, there's the line, you can't start at, what is it? You can't start at fucked. And that's done by Uncle Jimmy. And that's about the episode. Like, the whole thing is a messed up ecosystem that's so messed up. And he's trying to bring order. Carmi's trying to bring order to the chaos. And as he's trying to build this and give all these types of things, and you see all the chaos that's going about in the story in season 1 and season 2, again, as Jennifer was saying, where you have like car horns and you have like alarms and people screaming and everyone's yelling, which I thought was a great personally, I thought was a great element of the show. And that he's trying to bring order. That's why he's saying, we're going to say chef, we're going to say hands. There's these certain disciplined orders that we're going to implement in order for us to accomplish something great, which is consistency. And he talks about that. And they even have in season 2 a discussion of the basketball coach that I'm forgetting as a self-help type, guide. And I'm forgetting the name of this basketball coach who's helping them through all of this stuff. And so yeah, I won't go into it too deeply because we don't have the time, but I'll just say that I vehemently disagree with the idea that you cannot have financial business success and a myopic focus on greatness in your career and a focus on romance. I think it happens. John Adams, I think even someone like Washington, he did write great letters to his wife. Like, I don't agree that it's not possible, but I do agree that there's a certain kind of dynamic between the two. But this is a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole nother conversation, but
yeah.
let me just say, we know Martha Washington burned a lot of his correspondence because she understood that whatever he wrote was going to be for posterity's sake.
Yeah. That's true.
So we don't know the messy agendas that went on there previously. We could certainly see what happened with Ben Franklin and his relationship.
Yeah, but I think that has to do with Ben Franklin.
It could do with Ben Franklin. But I tend to think that, in Atlas Shrugged, we see that it's possible to do both, to be excellent at one thing and also great romantically. We see that as an ideal. How it translates into life, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's super hard.
Super hard. Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason so many marriages and relationships fail is because good relationships are as hard to achieve as good businesses or great artistry. It requires a lot of clarity and focus that most of us aren't able, and most of us are taught not to necessarily bring to that area of our lives. So I tend to be more in sync with Uncle Jimmy's perspective, but hopeful that you are right.
Jennifer?
I think something I really appreciated about Carmen's arc and understanding his backstory plays into this. I don't know if he's a tragic character or not, but I think the reason why he can't do both, and I think normal people could do both, he's not. His background, and when you see the middle, I don't know, episode 5, the fishes episode that's an hour long, where he's go a flashback to his childhood, or not his childhood, but young adulthood, where you see his mother and how she handles the holiday. It was so uncomfortable to watch this part of his life, and it's so critical because I believe that's why he is the way he is. He is trying, even as a grown man, to still please his mother, who is impossible to please. She's scary. There was this moment, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis, wow, where
Mhm.
she's like in the kitchen and she's crying, and he comes in there to console her, and she's got like these dark eyes, and it's just can you imagine being a child growing up in that environment and that
Mhm.
sort of um, emotional mental abuse? And that is who he is. And so I believe that his entire path, career path, is perfectionism and trying to please his mother deep, deep, deep down in there. And that is why he doesn't believe he's good enough for somebody like Claire. You know, he's got really deep issues that he's dealing with. And until he can get past that, he can't have both. So, and maybe the uncle understands that, because he knows and intuitively what his background was like. He was there. But I think that's
As
a key part.
much as I like and agree with everything that Jennifer's saying, I have to say something that I don't know if it's relevant or not, but when you say normal people they can marry their career ambitions with their relationship ambitions. I have to push back and say, but these aren't normal people. And people who strive as hard as somebody like a Carmi, is not normal. It's, the great artist in any endeavor is not normal. Then so it's hard for me to use that as a standard of measurement for the normal as a standard of measurement for success in this. Even though I agree with you, he's got demons, and the demons clearly come from where he grew up and how he grew up, and the uncertainty that a bipolar parent probably had him live with. It definitely creates obstacles to his growth and obstacles to achieving what he wants to achieve, which I think are interesting. That's what's beautiful about complex characters. The drama can be internal, not just things coming at them from the outside. I still think he's not, I think he's not normal, but in the best sense of the word too.
Well, let me ask you guys go
Right?
ahead.
Okay. Go ahead. I mean, not normal in the best sense. Like when you say somebody's weird, but you mean it in a really cool way. So
Yeah, and I think this is a long-standing theme in American literature, but in terms of the difference between having your career success and having your romantic success, I don't agree with that dichotomy, but it's definitely prominent in American literature. In particular, one of Ayn Rand's favorite early novels was Calumet K, where this exact thing happens, where you have a great businessman essentially building a grain factory, and there's also a woman he's interested in, but he has no ability to make that work or figure out how to do that. And it's very common. You see that a lot as a conflict in a sense. Now, but I wanted to ask you something, Jennifer. You brought up the Fishes episode, which is episode 6. It's the episode right before the one that I really want to spend a good amount of time talking with you all about, which is episode 7. But Fishes is a really good episode in the sense of explaining a lot of what's going on thematically in and what they're all trying to accomplish. And there's always something in the background going with every single one of these characters that's revealed as you go through, a kind of damage that the restaurant is almost like a crucible to greatness. It's a crucible to betterment, a crucible to self-improvement. And I think that's a big theme that I saw here. And you see like the cause of the necessity for that in the Fishes episode. And I wanted to ask you all about the cannolis. So at the end of that episode, there's chaos everywhere. The whole thing is what I would say is like a beautiful dance of chaos. And they do that really well throughout the whole series. And I thought that was very powerful, even though I think it was you, Jennifer, who said this. I felt very anxious a lot. I don't like,
I'll tell you,
I said it.
I did not
but
find
you
it
said it,
beautiful
Jax.
at all.
yeah, but I'm gonna tell you why, from an actor's point of view, you might have felt that. And it's not just because the situation was uncomfortable and they're dealing with a mentally ill person for whom everything is a crisis, right? And you're always stomping out fires. I think there's a technical reason for that, but I'll get back to that after you make your point. Just remind me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I'd love to hear that. Oh, and that, yeah, you don't see it as beautiful. And what I see as beautiful is, again, there's purpose behind it. It's like, this is having this, and I could feel the emotion of like anxiety, because I'm a person who likes to order my world, and I think I'm pretty good at that. And so like I would want to take certain actions to make it a more ordered world, and I was like, I can't do anything, and this is freaking me out a little bit, and I had no control over anything. And but I thought they did a good job of like conveying that kind of thing. But anyway, so that whole episode is a culmination of chaos into one climactic moment. And then I think from the climactic moment, which is, I'll just spoil, the mother, after having a breakdown, runs her car, drives her car through the house. It's that crazy, right? And then he
Well,
kind
maybe for just really quickly, just set it up. So for the viewers really quick, is that it's a Christmas episode, basically. It's an hour-long episode, and it's a long flashback to Christmas with the Berzatos, basically. And it's like 250, like they started out like 256 weeks until they open, which is,
Yeah.
many years of a
Wow.
flashback while Mikey's still alive. And it's the slice of life of the kind of environment that Carmen has grown up in.
Yeah,
So, and
and it's
mom's in the kitchen making food
yeah.
for days, basically.
So she says, yeah. But yeah, so like she crashed the car, but then he looks at the cannolis, which are perfectly ordered and untouched, right? And I always found that interesting, because then toward the end of the series, then they bring the cannolis back as a representative of an important part of gaining the meaning back to what it means. And I think that's a big motivation. But I wanted to ask all of you what you thought about that chaos, if the cannolis meant anything to you, or if you noticed anything like that.
I noticed the fork in the cannolis. That's what I remember. So
I didn't notice that.
Mikey,
Michael threw it.
Mikey. Oh yeah, that to me was like major symbology. So the cannolis were perfect at the end, but Mikey's throwing forks.
Yeah.
And the one thing that was perfect and beautiful, he stuck a fork in it, like stick a fork in me, I'm done.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's what I noticed about it.
Anybody else? Or is it just me?
What exactly do you think it represents, and what do you think kind of closure you get with bringing back the cannoli and towards the end?
So part of it goes into a deeper theme, I guess. Like part of the theme I categorized in a very broad way was order through chaos via purpose. It's not a great formulation, but it's broad enough for me to hold. It's order through chaos via purpose. Part of what drives Carmy is, I think, gaining order in his life. And that's why he's so drawn and dedicated. Like he's a machine. He's turned into a machine in this great restaurant in season 1, right? Or before the season starts. That's who he is this kind of person that is all about perfect order, getting there early, working harder than everybody else, being better than everybody else, being that perfectionist. And what's behind that is that he comes from this place, and this is how he's able to gain control in his life. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think the cannolis represent that in a sense. That's how I took that. And so when he has his own restaurant at the end, he brings them back in order to say, this is mine. This is, and now it's not something I have no control over. I'm again bringing it into control.
So that just harkens me back to something Sanford Meisner used to suggest in acting, that talent comes from neurosis, and that drive comes from neurosis, particularly for the artist. And so that makes me get the sense that, and I've rejected that, by the way, because I think neurosis is a block to your talent. I think you're out of adjustment with reality when you're neurotic. But it seems that you're suggesting that, the drive to make order out of chaos is part of the fuel behind his ambition to be good at what he does. And to me, that's a neurotic drive. It's not a healthy drive. And perhaps
I would agree with that.
Well, perhaps one of the reasons why he's constantly feeling like he's on the edge of the cliff and about to go over.
Yeah, and I think that's.
But I thought it was healthy what he did with the cannolis. I thought it was a healthy thing for him to do, to actually bring them back and not make them the kind of trigger, trauma event that they were before. Like he felt like it wasn't. He felt like he kind of lost ownership of it, or like he lost the right in a way to make cannolis, because it was too much was too much dysfunction. It was too much neuroses. And I felt like it was a really great step in a healthy direction for him to like, no, you know what? I need to decouple the bad juju memories from the cannolis, and I need to like make these mine again.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I
Did you
agree.
not
like
think?
that.
Yeah, I
I
like
think
that.
that's
Okay.
I think that's very healthy. I'm just not sure how on the page I am with neurosis being the fuel for art.
Well,
You
I
know,
don't agree with that
or
either. I agree with you, Mark, in real life. But again, my argument is that that's prevalent in the show. Like throughout the
yes,
whole
of
show, this
course.
is a big part of all the characters. I think even Sydney, Richie is a big one where this happens with him in the sense of gaining a self-confidence. But again, it's coming out of this neurotic, neurotic's a good word for all these characters, this neurotic chaos. And how to, even in episode 7, Forks, which I want to talk about in a few minutes, there's when you learn about some of these side characters' backgrounds, like Garrett, the guy who's guiding Richie through the greatest restaurant in the world, essentially, or one of the great restaurants of the world, is part of Garrett's revelation is that he used to be an alcoholic, right? And part of what he says is that this brought me purpose and value, and I became better through this. And you see that with pretty much everybody in the series. They all have that thing, and that's what coming out of that through the restaurant, through
Yes,
building a
yes.
restaurant.
I
And
love that.
but I agree with you and Mark in the sense of in real life, I don't think like if you do have that in real life, you should try to see a therapist. Like it's not necessary for the greatness, which I think you get that view a lot. Great artistry and great work. I think you get that view a lot in our culture, and this is an example of that.
Right. So are they perpetuating a myth? I
Yeah,
mean, in a sense they are, but they're also going with it and saying the solution is purpose. The solution
yeah,
is
that's what I like
direction,
about it.
which I like. But
Yeah.
I have to say something negative about this episode 6, and maybe
Okay.
I could be completely wrong, but I feel
Which
like
episode are you talking about? The fishes
Fishes.
episode?
fishes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get the sense that we feel anxious throughout this entire episode, not just because of how incredibly inappropriate the mother is and how incredibly chaotic the entire episode is, which is great. This is a necessary episode. You need to see where Carmy comes from. You even need to see sort of the origins or the beginning places of Mikey's suicide, because you start to see the incredible family dysfunction that could be at the root of his mental illness, even inheriting it from his mom, that makes him unable to deal with whatever we're going to find out with respect to Mikey later on. However, there is a distinctive the chaos follows every episode. There's a lot of chaos and noise and roughness in every episode, but this one was distinctly different. Not just because it was dealing with the family, but because the style of the actor, of at least 2 of the actors, was very different. Up until this time, you've been dealing with chaos with actors who function in an extremely relaxed, technical way. Now, they may be going through lots of stuff emotionally, but they're relaxed. When an actor isn't relaxed, when an actor's pushing a story, this is a technical thing. You, as the audience member, get tense. You get tense, and it's not because they're going through anxiety. It's because they're trying to make you feel something. They're trying to, it's a presentational acting in a way. And it becomes a little bit glaring because you're so used to not seeing any cracks. You're so used to not seeing any acting in the show that when you do see it, it's a bit arresting.
Can
Now,
you give
granted,
examples, by the way, of each of those?
yeah, I mean, now this just could be my taste in the way that Jamie Lee Curtis portrays this bipolar person. It just felt acty to me, and
Okay.
that's all I could say. She has a tremendous thing to overcome, a really really difficult part that demands hyper emotionality. That puts a lot of stress on the actor. That puts a lot of strain on the actor because they feel an obligation to live up to that emotional life, and there could be tension in themselves while attempting to live up to it. It's really hard to release and let go a characterization that's so specific and has such clear emotional goals for the actor to reach. And I also found that with another actor I don't want to say, but I did find the same miss, the same kind of self-consciousness that I didn't see in Bob Odenkirk. I didn't see in the other characters who were engaged in just as much of the stressful situation as everybody else, but they were dealing with it like we deal with life in the moment.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
this could be just a taste.
like it's just like an organic thing. You're saying like it felt like they were really, someone was really going to throw a fork at you. How would you react to that in real life?
Is that
what you mean?
It felt like trying. An actor can't feel.
Yeah, would you
like
call it
trying.
overacting?
I would say the actor is trying, and that's going to sound strange to y'all because acting is doing, but the actor can't try to feel. They can't try to they can't try to force the emotional elements of the scene to happen. And what makes this project so amazing is that throughout you never feel that with anybody. What they're experiencing comes right out of the raw moment.
Mhm.
And but the mom had to propel the scene, and she had to push the action. Her insanity has to push the action. And it's super hard to do something like that without pushing. And it's that element of pushing, that technical element of pushing, that creates the agita dynamic in the audience member who doesn't even know why they're feeling tense. Because I don't think you'll feel tense while you're watching a situation like that organically acted. You'll feel uncomfortable. You'll feel different things. Shame, pity for the people who have to go through this stuff, or anger, sadness.
Is it a separation you have as an audience member when it's done well?
No, when it's done well, you have no separation. You have a melding with the actor and the situation. Like whenever Carmy and his girlfriend are together. Now, this just could be a technical thing that I notice. Actors notice choices, and they ask themselves, would I be that good? Would I be able to do that? Would I be that organic? Whenever I see her looking at him, it's so simple. It's so clear. It's so honest. There's no veneer. There's no idea, quote unquote. Now, this may sound bad to objectivists, but the actor has to have ideas about the way things go and let them go and trust that the other person in the situation will bring it out of them. And that lends the relaxation to the piece that enables you as a viewer to engage, to fully go, to fully invest yourself in their emotional life. Otherwise, there's a part of you that's defensive. There's a part of you that's right.
I just read this or heard this recently, and I'd be curious what you say about this because I'm not an actor. I took like an acting class and I was terrible. But I think like someone was saying, a critic was saying that one of the things you can see is somebody who, when they're trying to convey sadness or being sad in some level, there's two big ways you could do this. You could like just start breaking down and crying and sobbing, or you could try to restrain you try to hold back the tears. And he was arguing that holding back the tears and having that in your body is actually more impactful to the audience because then they have to feel that. Is this what you're saying? I don't.
In a sense, but I'll say it differently. I'll say it in a way that maybe is easier to grasp. The actor has to be engaged in doing. They have to be engaged in doing. And out of that comes an emotional life. She has to be engaged in getting the problem solved, and she can't. It's just like a problem of Sisyphus, and she has to do it like that. And out of that comes her anxiety and emotional life, as opposed to knowing that she has to be anxious and filled with emotion and demonstrating it. Acting is not a demonstrative art. It's not demonstrative. It's doing and then experiencing based on your commitment to what you're doing. And if she was super committed to getting it done, then it will take on an organic life of its own, right? It'll take on a real organic life that won't make you tense. It'll make you feel for everybody involved.
I have a question for you, Mark. In terms of Jamie Lee Curtis's performance in that episode versus
I feel terrible saying this, by the way, because I love her as an actor. I've worked with her.
Yeah.
She's so very creative, dynamic.
Well, she also has a difficult job. Like she's jumping into a season 2, 1 episode, and it's like she's got to do this. She's got to carry the whole show in a sense.
It's impossible.
Like it's a very difficult job. So I see what you're saying.
So how do you feel though about her?
Go ahead. I just want to impress upon people how difficult it is to jump into a show that already has a rhythm, that already has a style, where people are totally comfortable with themselves in it, and so that they can work on that level of improvisational skill, and then to come in on a show that has you on the emotional edge of a razor and having to carry the emotional life of the show on your shoulders. That is a hellacious task.
Yeah. Yeah. Jax, what were you
So,
gonna say?
so my question is, how do you feel about her performance in that episode, in the Fishes episode, versus her performance in the very last episode where she shows up at the restaurant but chooses not to go in, and the conversation
I
that she
don't
has
know.
with Sugars? Because I felt, if we talk about it in terms of like anxiety, I felt less anxious in watching that, and it wasn't just because of the tension of, you know, the Fishes episode and that she was going to go nuclear, but I felt like there was something more relaxed about the way that she showed up as mom in that very last episode, that allowed me to feel the full
Mhm.
weight of the sorrow that she's carrying in having, she knows she's got a mental disorder, which, by the way, I think she's borderline and not bipolar. It's a smaller distinction, but
Well, she's also
she
that's
has,
terribly lonely and sad, and there's
well, she has abandonment issues. She's
abandonment
afraid that people are
issues. Yeah.
abandon her. And that's very borderline. That's classic
Oh,
borderline.
that's scary. Well,
Yeah.
look, in answer to your question, yes, I didn't feel as much anxiety in that section. But look, here's the deal. I think in a normal quote unquote TV show, I would have never noticed. I would have never noticed because it would have fit completely with, it would have been a series of great choices in a TV show of the same with the same tone. But because I had been it was what, how many episodes? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 episodes into a show that has a very, I mean, nearly impossible level of great acting, like just
Yeah. Everyone
superior
did.
acting on everybody's radar. Like, could I achieve that? I don't know. I hope in those conditions I could do that. But when you see that, and that's your standard now, anything that just falls slightly short of it, an ounce of self-consciousness will be readable. It's like, will be readable. I'll just be able to see you're acting. I know you're acting. I see that now. And you don't see it in any of the characters. You literally don't. And so it just makes the choices look like choices to me, as opposed to looking like an organic thing. But that's my own take. Maybe my feeling because of my eye, or just what my
Yeah,
taste.
your profession works on you, and you're working on your profession. Yeah, no, I
Okay.
get it. That's really good. Let's move on a little bit so we can finish up with a couple things. Jennifer, did you have any? Because there's a quote or two I wanted to talk about that would move us into episode 7, and one that I wanted to talk about. But Jennifer, did you have something?
Oh, I kind of started that topic, I guess, but I can wrap it up by just saying,
Sure. Yeah,
well,
please.
if they were trying to create anxiety so that we could feel what the characters feel walking on eggshells, it did work.
Yeah.
Because I was just like,
Yeah.
when is this episode going to be over? You know, so.
I felt the same way. Yep, I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Indeed,
Okay.
they did. Indeed, they did.
Okay, one of the great lines in movies, I think there's a lot of great lines in movies. One that I love is "As good as it gets," when Jack Nicholson's character says, "You make me want to be a better man."
I love that.
I think it's one of the great earned lines in storytelling. I think like it's because you really get a sense of what he's going through, what he's trying to accomplish, bettering himself. I think this has the next best one. I
Wow.
wear suits now. So
Oh,
Richie says that over and over
Ah.
again in one of the
Yeah.
in one of the later episodes, and it feels like such a great earned moment in terms of his
Yep.
arc. And if you think about where he started, I mean, he gets stabbed, he shoots off a gun, he's constantly yelling, screaming, he's chaos, he's sad, he's divorced, he hates his, he has a conflicted relationship with his daughter. I mean, he's just chaos personified. He really
Yeah,
is.
and he
Like,
has no purpose.
his purpose.
Mhm.
He doesn't like them messing up with his ecosystem, which is exactly what losers say. right? Every loser in the world has always said, no, things working great now. It's like, no, dude, your life is a mess. You need to do something. And he's like, no, you're messing with the ecosystem. No, you're not messing with the ecosystem. You're a loser. And someone calls him out as a loser at one point too, a big loser, and then stabs him in the ass, like, which I thought was great. But not on purpose, by the way. So the I wear suits now is such a great moment, and it comes from the episode 7, which I think is one of the great episodes of television, called Forks, where I recommend just watching that episode again if you've seen the show, because it's such a great, beautifully done. It starts off with that basketball coach again. I'm embarrassed, I don't remember his name.
Coach K.
Thank
Coach
you, Coach
K.
K.
Krasinski.
Yeah, and he is giving them motivational advice. And I've always been obsessed with self-help in my past. And one of the problems with self-help is you just read books and you don't do anything. Right? You don't take any actual action. But this is a show, this episode is about taking the small actions, right? Like, he goes to this great thing, and I call it a crucible, right? You're going a crucible of action to get great standards and becoming a better person. And he does, and one, great montage, and it's this beautiful imagery of the perfection that goes into fine dining. I think it also is a great episode to, like, go fine dining, like the passion that these people have that, helps you understand Carmi as well. It's just so wonderful, and it makes me want to put a lot of other things aside and, like, okay, I need to get that kind of level of perfection in my podcasting, in my writing, in my day job. Like, just that level of standard of, like, they're yelling about it, one smudge, and they have the whole staff there. And he's like, who had the goddamn smudge? Who did it? Like, and just the, like, and then the passion behind, we make people's days. That's why I do it. And, like, we want to wow people. They want to give a free meal to this person who did on Instagram, this teacher who's saved up so they can go to this. Like, it's just the perfect episode. And Richie is seeing all this. He also gets bad news about his ex-wife getting remarried. Like, it all happens. And then boom, he starts waking up at 5:30. He starts doing everything right. He's clicking. And then that moment when he puts that suit on, I'm like, yeah, I love having suits. I'm sad that I'm in Texas and it's too damn hot all the time. But I was like, yeah, I want to get a suit back on again, baby. Like, that's right. It's armor. Like, the world sucks sometimes. It's challenging, but put on that armor, get that sword, and get back out there. What do you guys think? Episode 7.
Anybody want to go before me?
I thought episode 7, I think that somebody who hasn't even seen the show could watch episode 7 and not know anything about the characters, about the context. And I think that episode will explain the entire show to you of where that show is, what that show hopes to achieve, because that was such a positive arc for Richie. He starts out at the bottom of the barrel. He doesn't give a crap about, cleaning the forks. It's called forks because, he comes in and he has to clean forks all day long for 8 hours. And it was such a beautiful example of a man who he's searching for purpose. He doesn't, he is a loser. He's searching for purpose. And it's through what he learns is it's through the act of doing that his purpose comes, rather than waking up one morning and what's my purpose? And let me define what my purpose is. He has to go through doing a whole bunch of shit that he doesn't want to do. And he kind of has to go through these motions. And that's what Garrett is teaching him is, it's almost kind of like the fake it till you make it, but in a really real, beautiful way that, like, makes sense, especially for his character. I have so much to say about this show. I don't want to, like, hog the spotlight, but I will also say I have so much respect for, I thought one of the greatest performances in that episode, sorry, I'm saying I have respect for the episode. I think one of the greatest performances in that episode was by the actor portrayed Garrett, who I have so much respect for, an actor who can come in and not be part of the show for just one episode. I guess if you want to contrast it maybe to the portrayal of Donna, the mother, versus, the actor that came in and did Garrett, like, he was such a great character And he was such a great contrast to Richie. You know, he was like, he's showing to Richie, you know, this is who you can be, right? But you're not there yet. I just, and that the arc that Richie has from beginning to end, it was so positive, and it was such a great, we talk about sense of life. It was such a great sense of life feeling for him, because he doesn't understand, like, there's something that's always separated him from Carmen, and it's that Carmen has had purpose, and Carmen is a perfectionist and just rigorously dedicated to his purpose. And he feels like Carmen is punishing him in the beginning for sending him there, or sending him to restaurant school to, you know,
Get
to
rid of
clean
him.
forks all day long. Right. And that was the last thing from Carmen's mind, right? And in the end, when Richie finally figures out, you know, he tells Carmen, I don't know if we see it in that episode, or maybe it was the episode after, where he says, I understand, cousin, what you did now. I understand what it's like.
Yeah.
I thought it was beautiful.
Let me give you some purpose. Get those streaks out of those forks, Garrett says. That's what he said. Let me give you some purpose. Get those streaks out of those forks. Jennifer, Mark, did you have comments on episode 7?
Well, it sounds like Mark had a
Well,
bunch.
I have tons, but I'll defer to Jennifer.
Okay, Jennifer, then
I
Mark.
mean, this episode didn't stand out to me as much to you guys. I absolutely agree with Richie's arc was beautiful. And I think what I also appreciated about it was the aesthetics. It was so different from every other episode. You know, you go in and there's these blues and grays and everything's calm and perfect and clean. And I thought that was a good contrast to be in an environment that he was stuck into. But I'm interested to hear why it
Well, they
moved
had good
Mark.
montages where you saw that perfected, the greatest restaurant in the world, essentially, right? Is what they call it.
Mhm.
They
And
have a 3 Michelin stars,
Yeah.
which is like
the highest
the
you can
top.
get. Yeah, and they've kept it since year 1. But you have great montages where they're showing you that episode or that restaurant, and then they're cutting to the Carmi's restaurant, revealing a table, putting down a seat cushion and things like that. Like, so it's like here's the vision of what they want, and here's the process of beginning. Mark, what you got?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to experience what it would be like to step into Galt's Gulch for a minute, right?
Ah,
For an episode, this is what it would be like.
Yeah.
And this is how that exposure to people who live consciously on every level, this is the kind of transformation it could possibly have on me. And we get to see it on Richie. And it is a tremendous transformation where he learns the little things matter, that attention to detail matters, that being conscious through every part of your job and your life matters. And that's what makes you better. I think Richie was living on autopilot. Living on autopilot. And I think a lot of people live in that state of what objectivists would call drift. And, you know, where they just absorb what's going on around them. They react to what's going on around them, not in a necessarily efficient or good way, because they haven't really processed that stuff. They're in a state of drift all the time. And that's the state that he's in. And his exposure to people who take every moment as if it matters changes him into a man who understands that every moment matters.
Every
That's
second
cool.
counts.
Every second counts.
Every second counts, which is the
Yeah.
line they have up there. It's
Yeah.
so true. So good. I'm getting chills right now.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I
Just
love
even
that.
thinking about it. And that's why I agree with you, Kirk, that is the best episode of the season. And one of the greatest arcs I've seen in television in a long time. And what's so cool about it is it's so subtle, it's so
Yeah.
human, it's so poetic. It's
And
a
they did it in
spiritual,
30 minutes.
and
Yeah.
they did it in
Yeah.
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
These writers are
Unbelievable.
crazy. They're
Yeah.
crazy good. And these actors are crazy good. That's why I feel bad saying what I said about Jamie Lee Curtis, because she's crazy good. But she's in there with people who are ridiculously good. Like
Yeah.
they're not touchable in a lot. I mean, Oliver Platt as Uncle Jimmy, I have to just give a shout out to him. He's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
good.
he's perfect. He's
Yeah.
just perfect.
Amazing. But he brings to every moment that thing that I talk about as an actor, which I respect, that total clarity, that complete relaxation, that total vulnerability and openness to what's going on, knowing what he's doing and how he feels about it, and letting the world take him there.
Did you guys think he was a gangster at any point?
I did. At first I
I
thought he
thought he
was.
was like a gangster, like a Tony Soprano at first, and then later I was like, no, he's not. He's just a normal guy.
He's just a businessman. He's a rich businessman.
Because he says like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
but-
break your legs or something. I was like,
Oh, but I mean,
what?
this is Chicago,
That's
right? I mean,
Chicago.
in
That's just how they
Chicago and
talk.
in
Yeah.
Chicago and
Yeah.
New York, you got to figure there's, the businessmen and the gangsters are one step removed from each other, and they probably share the same, the
Yeah.
same spaces oftentimes.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Well,
He does wonderfully. Jennifer, go ahead.
I went back and listened to our season 1
Yeah.
commentary. And that was one of the things that Jax had said when we asked the question, where do we want it to go? Where does it go from here? Before they had put out season 2. Jax had said, I think that the mob is going to get involved somehow. I don't know if you remember saying that, but yeah, that was funny.
Vaguely.
Well,
I trust when you say I said it.
It is Chicago, and the mobs tend to like the waste management and restaurants. So it's not irrational to say that.
Well, there's definitely a link there in a sense, because I remember there was a point when he was like, when Richie goes outside because they're doing some kind of drug deals or something, is like, you can't, like, please don't do this here. And it was a symbiosis of like, the mob is there and they are the mob, but there's a kind of interesting respect of
They
the
brought them
businesses in that.
food and
Yeah,
they
they
were
brought
like,
them
hey,
food
look,
as
you
well.
can't like have shootouts and stuff here. We'll give you some
Yeah.
food. Just maybe keep it out the corner.
Yeah,
and,
we're trying
like
to run a
working
business
with
here.
them.
Yeah, and they all agree in a sense of, I mean, it definitely, this whole show, I have to say some other things as we try to wrap up in the next 5-10 minutes or so, but some really interesting things about, the beauty of a city and the dynamism of a city, of a big city, which I've actually never lived in a big city. Denver, I guess, is the closest, but I've always lived in the suburbs of a city or something like that. Like, and a lot of my friends always try to convince me of it, and I love visiting them. I think I would like to live there if I didn't have to live in poverty, but just the beauty of the transformational process that happens in shaping a city, and how, like, I can imagine these restaurants are shaping these cityscapes because it's going to bring in a new kind of clientele. It's going to bring in if it's a really successful, good restaurant that Carmi does and it works out, that area will change. Maybe, like, that's one thing that will possibly happen. So I thought the romanticism of the whole show, in a sense, was the beauty of the cinematography, of all the perfection of the food was beautiful, right? It was beautifully shot food. And that, which emphasizes, I think, an interesting theme, which is food is love. We talked about chaos of family, and food is really a way that they convey love. Like, they have, remember in season 1, they have, what do they call it? Family dinner, or dinner family,
Yeah.
whatever. Right. And that's just for the workers, right? The workers have it, and it's very important. They even assign one of the chefs to do this special meal, and they take that very seriously. It's not just like, I've worked at restaurants before. They never did that when I worked at restaurants before. There's like, just, yeah, go get something from the kitchen. Like, all right, I'm fine. But they really sat down, they hung out, they laughed, they yelled at each other, they did that, but they were getting ready for the day. And I really love that whole theme of food is love, which I think is a good part of the Fishes episode too, of what's trying to happen and what, the chaos of the kind of love that they experience.
How they shot the food reminded me a lot. Did you guys ever see the movie like Water for Chocolate?
No, I never saw that one.
Yes.
It reminded me a lot. I highly recommend
Beautiful.
it. It's a
Beautiful.
movie of love of food. It reminded me a lot. I haven't seen food shot that well since I saw that movie,
it's
except for the
beautiful.
bear.
Yeah.
But I do want to, Kirk, I wanted to kind of tack on to what you were saying about bringing in like the aesthetic of Chicago. I loved the aesthetic quality of this show. I love the music that they chose. I love the type of cinematography. I love the really good like close-ups. And I love how they make Chicago its own character. And it hasn't been since a show. I don't know if you guys ever saw the TV show with Dennis Leary, Rescue Me. that took place in
I know
post
about it.
9/11 New
Yeah.
York. And it reminded where New York was just as much of a character, but the music was so integral to the show. And I felt this same way, like this is Chicago. It just, all the music just reminded me so much of like I've actually never been to Chicago, but if I
Oh my
have,
God.
I've been to
What?
O'Hare, but
All right,
yeah,
we
we'll
have
to
the viewing room
road trip.
expedition. We have to all go to
You
Chicago.
gotta go to
every episode.
Chicago. It is one of
We'll
the
have some deep
greatest
dish.
cities. It is one
Yeah.
of the greatest cities on the planet. You have to go.
And by the way, this is a kind of side note, but that moment in season 7 or episode 7 when Richie delivers the deep dish pizza to that table,
Oh
and how
yeah.
proud he is and how excited he is. That's such a wonderful moment. I thought, like, he just he goes like this, like, can I send this out? Can I please be the one to get this out? And they're like, yes, we can do that. And I thought that was wonderful. Okay, so I guess one last thing, and I'd love to hear all of your final thoughts. I kind of mentioned this with the Chicago thing, but just building on the romanticism, in the sense of, one thing that I took out of this, and again, the goal of this show in a sense is to help you get more out of the shows that you watch, elevate your experience, is one thing that I think is important about any kind of romanticism and elevation, is that sense of taking what is just a seemingly mundane thing, the running of a restaurant or the making of a meal, and filling it with purpose, filling it with meaning, filling it with all different aspects of family and love. And like, all of that goes into, for instance, when Richie is told to, let me give you some purpose, get out those streets. Like, that is such how many times have we dealt with that kind of moment, and we don't think about the purpose and the meaning behind it? But this gives you all of that in one shot, one moment, 1 second, right? It's all kind of just packed into there. And I think that's one of the great things about good art and great art, is that it does that. It adds all of that. It elevates our daily, mundane, often boring lives. And it really does. Makes it so that when the next time, I want to go downstairs and make sure that my area looks beautiful and I'm ready to cook a good meal. Like, it does that. And I want to do my work a little bit better because I watch this show. And that's the translation of
Amen.
Berlin. So any
Yes.
last thoughts with everybody, and we'll wrap up here.
I just want to piggyback on what you said, which is probably just pretty much the same thing. I mean, good art helps you elevate your life to art. And
Ooh.
so, I think, yeah, imagine the experience of somebody who goes down to make his area the best area possible, the cleanest area. That person has elevated themselves, and they've elevated themselves to the level of art. And that's one of the great things I love about The Bear. It's elevating me watching it. It's giving me a bird's eye view of what it's like to have to run a restaurant, but beyond the realistic stuff, it's about the heroic arcs that these characters are experiencing, and they're possible to me because all of those characters are accessible.
Absolutely. All right, Jennifer, Jax, last thoughts?
You want to go ahead, Jennifer?
I don't know that I have any more to add. I just appreciated the themes of aspirational characters reaching for something beyond themselves and building, and how that was contagious, and how they even if they didn't know they wanted it, they kind of went along for the ride, even the supporting characters, and they were open-minded to it, some more than others. So I love that, and I love the arcs of it, of especially Richie and Carmen. I like the complexity of Carmen's character, and that he has this mother and he has a relationship and brother. Like, he's a really interesting, cool character that I would love to see where he goes in season 3, if they make a season 3. Yeah.
Probably. Jax.
So this show actually makes me, not only does it make me aspire to kind of being better at what I do just for the sake of just because for the show, and it's so compelling and it's so well done, but it makes me want to be a better writer as well, because the show is so well written. There's this, it's a lot of the characters talk over each other a lot, and in screenwriting it's called dual dialogue, where you write it, you're writing both chunks happening at the same time, and it's really difficult to do dual dialogue. And a lot of screenwriting books and teachers say to kind of minimize it, because it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult for actors to do that, like talking over each other all the time, and being able to focus on one, what one actor is saying versus another. And I think that this show, and it was the actors being able to carry that out well enough. Sydney in particular, I think the character of Sydney, who won an Emmy for her performance, she does dual dialogue really, really well, so that you can actually hear what she's saying while you're listening to what the other person is saying too, and that happens so consistently. It's so well done. I meant to actually, and I'm going to do this anyhow, to download a script and to see how it was actually written, versus I'm fascinated by how it's written and then how was it performed. So because those are often two different things, but anyhow, I have such an appreciation for the artistry and the level that this show operates on.
Beautiful. Okay, well, thank you everybody for watching another episode of The Viewing Room, and make sure to click that like button and subscribe and come back, because we will be back with more shows. So thank you everybody, and see you next time.